Andrew, thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Let's jump in on stimulus. So my understanding is on the 27th of March. Yeah, I believe 27th of March, Trump signed this $2.2 trillion stimulus package. First of all, is this unprecedented? Has there
I
been?
think it is. I think in the size of the package, because you think about TARP was 250 million. I could be wrong on that, but it was magnitudes smaller than what we saw today.
Yep.
So anytime you have government intervene, especially at that scale, you have to think that there are going to be unintended consequences.
Yeah.
That could be inflation. That could be it could be a lot of things.
But even I remember in 08, 09, Obama had a stimulus package back then. I should have looked this up. What were those numbers? It wasn't $2.2 trillion, was it?
No,
it was
definitely had
less.
a B in front of it or behind it. Yes, it was in the billions.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, because I just remember back then, everyone's like, "Oh man, this guy's spending money."
It'd be an interesting benchmark. Yeah.
And here now we're at $2.2 trillion.
You'd almost wonder, has politics gotten so important at the forefront in our culture and just for our leaders that it does not matter maybe past the next 8 years what happens through those decisions and through those.
Do you think that's the case?
It feels like that way to me. So I think when I was working in the Bush administration, there was real thoughtfulness around, was it the right thing to do? Mm-hmm. Integrity was literally the first question, even systematically. Mm-hmm. We had processes and systems that we went through that vetted the action or the activity or, whatever it was to make sure that it was met the Bush standards of integrity and morality. And I just feel like it was not shoot first, ask questions later. It was a thorough process that we went through. So that doesn't seem to be happening today.
Really? Well, but don't you think also this is different because it's so big, it's so fast, and it's so unprecedented. We don't know anything about it. Part of me is impressed that they are taking action so quickly, but I don't know anything about the economics. At the end of the day, there is no free lunch. $2.2 trillion is a lot. And what is the national debt? Someone just mentioned the other day, it's $27 trillion, which the last I remember, it was I remember being concerned about it when it was $18 trillion. So apparently it's way beyond that by now.
It's got to be.
But also it's a tough spot because if you don't take action quickly and spend some money, well, then that's also, if the American economy goes boom or bust, you know what I mean? If it drops over dead, well, then we have massive problems anyway,
I think too, though, there is, especially this past, and we've been in a bull market for almost 12 years now. Was this the pin that pricked the bubble? We don't know. And is it a healthy thing for a business cycle to go through a bankruptcy period or through a cleansing period? I think I would argue that it probably is. So if Boeing were to lay off their thousands of workers, well, somebody would be there to buy those assets, right?
Right.
And, give those, there's actual assets associated with that company. So you can, it's not that simple where Boeing's bankrupt, thousands of jobs are lost. Well, there is a process. There is a bankruptcy process that works for a reason.
Yeah, there is. And that is the having experienced a bankruptcy in our companies in the last year, it's a necessary component of capitalism.
Right.
There's two things someone mentioned that would really help me was, one, if you enjoy and appreciate a capitalistic society, there's two things that are necessary for that. Is one, capital has to be able to move around. By definition, that is, capital needs to move. If something's not working, capital needs to move out of that and into something else that is working. And second, you have to limit the downside at some point. You can't have someone go for a venture, it not work out, and then they're a slave to it the rest of their life. Right. Because we wouldn't sign up for it. If it's you can take a risk, but it doesn't work out, you need to spend the rest of your life trying to make it work somehow, make the best use of it. Well, no one would take a risk. Right. No one would venture. So for capitalism to work, there does have to be that that clause that allows you to. Everyone needs a path for redemption, And so if you get into something that's not working, bankruptcy is an option, and that's what it's there for. And two, capital needs to be able to move around.
Sure. Yeah, and I think that process, if you know someone's not going to bail you out, quote unquote, bail you out, like the government has in the past, now again, potentially, I think the motivations of a business, especially a large business that has industry-wide ramifications, you take certain accountabilities away from that leadership. Where, so for example, they're talking about bailing out the airlines. There's been share buybacks, which is not a bad thing, right? But and lots of borrowed, lots of credit involved. There's been some unhealthy practices, is my point, that maybe United, American, who are some of the most bloated entities out there, maybe it's a healthy thing to flush it out. And let the cream rise.
So what do you know about the stimulus? Let's talk about that. My understanding is, here's what I know about it. $2.2 trillion, March the 27th. Small businesses, I read somewhere that small businesses potentially getting loans up to 250% of 1 month of like payroll, rent, operating expenses, that type of a thing. Americans, we're expecting like $1,200 a pop if you make less than $75,000, right? Maybe $500 per kid. And that's literally like all I know about it. So what?
Yeah, I mean, it really is new territory in a lot of ways. I think I think it was Milton Friedman, who was a famous economist, made the joke about helicopter money. Like he kind of coined the term helicopter money as a joke. It was not a serious comment. And today we are living in a real scenario where the administration or where the powers that be, they're actually delivering helicopter money, like you just described in that. So yeah, it's never been, I think, fleshed out fully in academia or amongst economists. So I think there's
you mean something like this has not been fleshed out fully?
I think well, maybe it has, but not in practice, I guess. So helicopter money, I don't think, at least in the United States, has not happened. So I mean, there could be all kinds of ramifications around that.
And by helicopter money, do you just mean the government, the central bank, the feds, whoever it is just dumping money on the people? Is that what you mean?
Writing checks. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that term helicopter money is it's more of an economic, I guess, would say, or academic construct.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's literally that. It's writing checks or giving money. And really what it is the Fed is printing money and the legislature is taking that money and distributing it amongst the population.
So when the feds print money like this, I mean, well, obviously we've been off the gold standard, for such a long time, right? So
since Bretton Woods, I think, yeah.
Since when?
Bretton Woods.
When was that?
Oh, well, Nixon took us off. Well, no, it was I think it was in the 30s that we actually came off the gold standard.
I don't know if I quite understand how I'm not sure. So we can just print money. I understand that. We're off the gold standard. We can just print money. What is even the check and balance at a high level? Like, why does that even have to be a problem if a year from now we can just print more money?
Yeah.
Do you understand that at that level?
Sure. Well, so, I mean, the big picture consequence is typically when I think the difference for the United States, I guess we need to understand is we are the world's reserve currency. So when you are the world's reserve currency, you have more runway.
What does that mean?
So,
the world's reserve currency.
So all around the world, the dollar is used to price commodities, for example. So oil is priced in U.S. dollars. Other countries, which is the big point, other countries cannot get loans, cannot issue bonds in their own currency because it's too weak or it's too volatile. So they are issuing debt in U.S. dollars.
Like with other countries or wherever?
So it could be institutions could buy it or other countries could buy it or individuals could buy other countries' bonds as well. Yeah.
But if they do, it's in the USD.
Correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I think when you are the reserve currency, you have less of a risk of inflation. So it's probably deeper than I understand, but the reserve currency gives us as the United States the ability to print, whereas Zambia does not have the same ability to print.
Wow.
Or you get hyperinflation like you did with the
Oh, I see.
Weimar Republic or
Oh,
Zimbabwe
okay.
or Venezuela today.
Yeah, so I didn't understand that because I do remember paying closer attention to all of this when the last crash happened under Obama. And I just remember hearing from multiple sources, like in 4 years, inflation is just going to be rampant.
Yeah.
And then it never quite happened, nowhere close to the extent that we were warned about.
Right.
So is that just
But what did happen was, so the Fed lowered interest rates to zero, which again, today we're at zero, which I think the real problem of doing that, there is no yield. So savers who have cash, an economist the other day said cash is trash because you cannot, there is no yield, right? So you have really limited places, especially as retail investors, to put your money. You have to either put it in a near zero savings account. You could buy a bond, which also somewhere around the world has negative yields. In the United States, it has 0.8, just under % yield. Or you can put it in equities. So I think the Fed, by doing that, just gave you limited places to put cash. So everybody's just in a drive for yield. So the only place for that cash to go was equities, which is why you saw that decade plus long ramp in equities.
Oh, interesting. So you're saying the inflation drove money into essentially the stock market?
Not inflation, I think low interest rates.
Oh,
so low
okay.
interest rates, limited places to put, you had limited places to go to actually
gotcha.
to get a yield on your cash.
So is it still correct to assume that we have to pay for this $2.2 trillion stimulus somehow, someday, or is that not even really correct? Isn't that not even really the way it works?
Yeah. I don't know fully. I mean,
Just keep that mic
sure.
nice and close. Just pull it towards you. No problem.
Sure. Pull this way. So, will the chickens come home to roost? Is I guess or will we be working for the Chinese someday?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's the big question. No one really knows. There's typically when this happens, you would expect inflation to happen, which means prices go up and the dollar gets weaker, right? So so in Venezuela is a good example. So if you owned a Venezuelan currency, you would have a day where it might go up 1,000%. So you literally have people going on their lunch breaks to buy groceries because it will be about 15, 20, 25% or even 100% more expensive hours later.
Wow, that's crazy.
So that's a hyperinflation example. But I think the fear is that someday we will experience inflation and the dollar will lose buying power. Our cash will be worth less than it was before. So the argument is, you ought to hold some gold and be short U.S. dollar positions.
And if you saw inflation coming, or if there was a high probability of inflation, you had some cash, gold, real estate would be a good thing to put the money into as well, right? The one thing you wouldn't want to really do is just sit on a bunch of cash because it would literally just get worth less and less as the days went by, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, not a trader, but I think, you definitely, I think a gold is a good place to be. Not entirely, but, some really a balanced portfolio is where you want to be, which is, I'm not a financial planner. But I think that is actually a truism that, some kind of balance makes sense. But I think gold is an important part of that.
Yeah. Yep. So if someone was sitting on some cash right now, what would you do if you had some cash right now? Or would you wait a couple of weeks and kind of see where this is going to go?
As a business owner, I'd be investing in myself. I really would be doing. But yeah, I think there's a chance that we enter into a period of deflation, which means slow growth and lower prices. And I think after that, I think there is a period where we will experience some inflation, where we will have so much debt and so much money in circulation that prices will naturally rise, and our dollar, our cash will be worth less than it was before.
Yeah. What do you know about what's in this stimulus bill? Do you know more specifics about like what it means for someone with a small business? My understanding was, I think a neighbor mentioned this, that that loan potentially you don't even have to pay back. Like it's literally free money.
I think all the loans are going through the SBA process, Small Business Association.
Okay.
So the SBA loans have their own processes. I think they have been relaxed some. But I think the terms have been relaxed and the qualifications have been relaxed. Not, and maybe the repayment schedule. But I think ultimately, I mean, I think it'll be a traditional loan where it needs to be paid back.
Well, that's what I thought too. I mean, maybe this was not correct what he was saying, but I just don't know much about it. But it was,
And I don't either. So.
yeah. And if that's the case, I mean, I can't think of another time in my lifetime that I remember where this type of thing happened, where you might get a loan and not have to pay it back. What I read this morning was that potentially, and I don't know if this is for all businesses or some businesses or whatever, but potentially you wouldn't. Yeah, it was 250% of 1 month's operating expenses. You may not have to pay it back. You might just have to pay the 4% interest on whatever it was, pay that back. But man, I'm sure there's a mountain of paperwork and everything, piled up on it.
Even the process has been streamlined.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it is an opportunity for a small business owner to access some capital where they might not be before.
Are you going to use any of that for Bright Trip?
I don't plan to. For a venture-backed company, it's having no debt is attractive, and just running it on investments and our own cash flow. I took out an SBA loan for my last company, and I think I regretted it in the end.
Was that Thrivist?
That was Thrivist.
Oh, okay.
So a small one, $200,000. It was a small part of our fundraise.
Yep.
But I think just mentally, psychologically, it was a detractor from our business. So I think in the future, I just prefer to grow in a way that through revenue and through outside investors.
Yeah. Was it burdensome on I'm sure you had a lot of paperwork to go through to get it and everything, but was it just like you had investor money and then you had this kind of pain in the side over here, the SBA loan? Is that why you would stay away from it again? Just because of the streamlining and just the clearing of your mind and everything's kind of simple and
there's probably lots of reasons not to take out a loan, especially for a small business, which is inherently risky. But I think for me, it was just hanging over our head, like it was not clean,
Right. Yes, exactly.
For me, and our balance sheet was not spick and span like I wanted it to be.
Okay.
So it's more of that.
When you do an SBA loan for something like that, because that was largely a venture-backed endeavor as well, right?
Right.
So when you do an SBA loan for something like that, is the payback plan at the point of sale, or when do you pay the SBA loan
I think
back?
it was a traditional 10, 15-year loan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was the first capital in to Thrivist.
I see.
So it was really, we used that to prove concepts.
Okay.
But I mean, there is a lot of cash out there. So if you have a good idea and if you get some traction, not that it's not hard, it's never easy to fundraise, but if it truly is a good idea, there's a lot of cash interested in funding ideas. Now the climate might be different. Post coronavirus, but traditionally, especially again because there's nowhere for that cash to go except for into equities or into private equity investments. So because the yield is so low.
Yep. Well, I know in the last few years, really, in the real estate world, the returns were just getting driven down so much because there's so much money out there.
Yep.
You had people lining up to buy real estate at 5, 6, 7%, ROI, which is so low, unless you're sitting on a lot of cash, you might want to be looking elsewhere to get a better return. Is that kind of your general philosophy on small business debt in general, is just stay away from it?
I don't know. I'm sure it's right for some people. I think especially lifestyle businesses. If you think about lifestyle business, they can really use, they've proven the model, a lawyer, for example, or a doctor, or lawnmower services. Those are lifestyle type businesses that there's demand and you are literally funding growth. You're not funding an idea. You're not funding a test case or a product, or it literally is a proven, if you invest in marketing, you will get X customers whom you might go cut their grass, for example. So I think that it's just a different scenario. I think it was the original intent of a small business loan is to fund companies like that had a proven model, had proven revenue, had customers, and wanted to grow.
Yep.
A startup or a technology-based company, I mean, it's infinitely scalable, right?
Yep.
It is not a lifestyle business.
Yep.
It is designed to grow quickly and to grow fast and to have the scalability because you're using technology. But the big question is, are you making something that people want?
Yes.
So,
yeah.
And can you achieve product market fit, and can you have a repeatable process that you're able to repeat and marginal?
Yeah.
So.
I think I side with Dave Ramsey on the debt thing for small business.
It's funny though, backing up to our earlier conversation. So, in an inflation scenario, an inflationary environment benefits debtors. I've actually wanted to call Dave Ramsey and be like, okay, if you believe that there's after this $2 trillion, stimulus package, which inevitably should, at least in economic theory, lead to some type of inflation. What do you do with that? How can you? I mean, it ultimately will benefit debtors.
Yeah,
because you can pay back your debt,
with cheaper money than you got it.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's a fixed loan. Right?
Yes.
So anyway, I'd love to hear him think through that.
Yeah. But don't you think though that I mean, I don't know what his target market is, but I do think that there's value in making some self-made rules, whether that's personal finance, business finance, because if I think about the trouble that we got in, which ultimately led to bankruptcy, we wouldn't have been in that trouble if we had stuck by my rules. You know what I mean? Like where we got into trouble was we crossed over boundaries that I had set years prior. So inflation or deflation, debt. I mean, everyone's got their opinion on this. Like, I'm okay with debt if it's a cash flowing asset, a property, an investment, whatever it is. But it's cash flowing and it's a hard asset. But I think people should be careful with debt for small business.
I agree.
Generally speaking,
I agree.
Very careful.
I think there's a real lack of understanding a lot of times what that debt is and what it means for your business and how it might impact you and your business, and how well you sleep at night.
Exactly.
And qualitative and actual, impacts on your business. So
I totally agree. And for people running a business, like they're the chief asset. You know what I mean? Like you're the chief asset of Thrivist.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry. Well, you were, but Bright Trip.
Right.
And when your chief asset gets their mind busy and can't sleep and gets a lot of stress because they know what could happen if things don't go well with these loans and these liabilities and these debts. Well, now you basically sidelined your chief asset.
Right. It's a distraction.
So it's a big distraction.
Focus on making your business work and grow and achieving revenue and sizable revenue.
Yeah.
That is a much better goal. And you'll sleep better too.
Totally agree. What about thoughts on what we can learn here from like the 08-09 crash, like how some learnings or lessons from all of that can be applied now with what we're going through?
I think the 08 crash was almost a lot simpler than what we're going through right now. So 08 crash, there were debts that could not be paid. So creditors took a haircut, right? Which impacted the banking system, which in turn, impacted the economy. So that's very simple, right? So somebody ran up a debt, mortgage lenders ran up a debt that ultimately could not be paid. And then it crashed. Now it's almost like we're in a paradigm shift. So we've gone through a period of growth and through, equity growth. What is after this? After all that money has gone into equities, and after all this has happened, all the Fed, engineering has happened. Are we now in a period of deflation that and low growth and stagflation? So I think time will tell what that paradigm shift is, but I think the cash flows will reflect what that new shift is. So it's almost simpler, like. It was like almost fundamental. Like the debts cannot be paid, so in turn the crash happened. It just broader impacts on the economy.
Yeah, and for all
And the economy did not stop for now 2 months.
exactly,
or coming up
yeah.
in 2 months. Yeah.
But would you say that history has proven that the stimulus in '08 was necessary and beneficial? Would you say that? I mean, I kind of perceive that it was, but I don't really follow it that closely.
Yeah,
I guess.
I wonder, did it prolong? Yes, a lot of people benefited, mostly the rich, if you think about it, the people who held shares, not the kind of middle class and lower class who typically did not invest in the stock market. So probably inordinately benefited them and drove up share prices, so they felt richer, and we all kind of felt like the economy was better than or healthier than it really was. Would it have been better, and we can think about this, but would it have been better to let those bad actors go through the bankruptcy process, cleanse that, and would we have been healthier? Yeah, it would have been hard and difficult, but how we avoided a situation like we're in right now where, not the virus, of course, but just a healthier economy as determined by like the fundamentals.
Right. Yep. So how I want to have a full update on Bright Trip. First of all, tell people more about Bright Trip, and then I'd love to hear where you guys are at, what you're working with, what some of the challenges are, and how you're handling what's going on right now. Because my understanding is no one's traveling. Maybe they're still, buying travel guides or
armchair travel.
Yeah.
So Bright Trip is offering video-based travel courses to teach people how to experience a place with confidence. So a good example is we have a course on Tokyo. So if you were going to Tokyo, the Bright Trip course would basically teach you the story about that place and how to experience that place and get the most out of your trip. So we think of, a more informed trip is a better trip, really. So to go back to the Tokyo example, if you're traveling to Tokyo, the Bright Trip course gives you a dose of, the history of Tokyo, and it gives you some practical tips too on like how to ride the subway system and how to get from the airport into the city. And another example would be, how to do ramen in Tokyo, and what is ramen and why is that important to the culture, and how do you do it well? So the point being, for Bright Trip, it's smarter travel that allows you to just be prepared and just be in the place while you're there, and not learn how to ride the metro system or learn how to, do the various food scenes and things like that. Yeah.
Well, that being the case, I mean, shoot, wouldn't it be some of the best money you're going to spend? Like if you're going to travel to Tokyo, for example, you're spending thousands to get there and back, right? I mean, you're spending some money. And so if you spent some money on a travel course, a few $100, I don't know, less than $100, I don't know how much these things are, but you spend just a little bit of money so you don't have to like learn by trial and error while you're on the trip. You're going to leverage your trip so much better.
Yeah, no.
Is that one of the selling points?
That's our thinking. Yeah. So we're visually teaching you, first of all. I think video is our differentiator. So there are these guidebooks out there that, which are great and they serve their purpose, but we are teaching you how to experience a place, not recommendations and reviews and kind of do this, do that. We are really trying to just equip you so you're able to experience that place when you hit the ground. You're not worrying about the various challenges that come with travel, or how to pack, or what to bring. It's literally an education for that location, or building skills that help you travel well as well. So we have a course on how to document your trip, for example. So if you wanted to document your trip and just tell the story of your trip so you can enjoy those memories later, well, a Bright Trip course is there to teach you how to do that, or how to pack is another example, how to travel with kids. I mean, that's honestly how I thought of Bright Trip, was because we were traveling to South Africa, and it was our first time to travel to Cape Town with kids, and I was scared to death.
You have 3 kids, right?
3 kiddos, yeah. So I wanted to know how to do it well. It felt like a high stakes trip.
Right.
So I wanted to really dive in and make sure I understood how to travel with kids, and how to navigate that, and the safety components in Cape Town, and how to navigate the safety with the family and what that dynamic looks like. So now we are creating a course on Cape Town.
Where did you look back then? Like that's what got you into Bright Trip. So what were your resources back then? YouTube or travel books, physical books?
I really enjoy learning visually, so I really enjoy watching videos. And yeah, I looked on YouTube, and it was all, for the most part, it was vlogs. So the motivations behind a vlog is very different than what we're doing. So obviously the vlog on YouTube is you're trying to get clicks, right? They're not really trying to deliver value. So the instructional quality of that was quite low. So,
okay. Is it higher on like entertainment? You know, they're trying to get someone to subscribe to their YouTube channel.
right. Yeah. So they're trying to get paid for that click. So yeah. So their motivation is to, your best 12 tips for Costa Rica. You click on it, but it's really about, it's a pretty light, it's not thought through. It's
Gotcha.
a lot of flashy, you know, probably women's in bikinis, that kind of thing that gets you to click.
Gotcha.
But it is very low value. So
I see.
I think about the XY axis of Bright Trip is entirely video, right? And high instructional quality. So right now you have like printed books that have a lot of great instructional value, or some blogs, but they're no video, right? Then you have YouTube, which is really low instructional value, but it's all video. So we thought the kind of top right quadrant was high quality instructional video, almost like explainer videos that were really enjoyable to watch, really high quality, led by experts, but really equips you for your trip abroad.
Yes. Yep.
And I think too, like sorry to interrupt you.
Yep. Go ahead.
But I think about, when you do a company, you think about like the market you're addressing. So we're addressing the travel content market, which is about $1 billion market. All the legacy companies are not doing video at all for the most part, and not doing it well at all. So we kind of saw an opportunity to modernize the travel content market away from blogs and written words and printed books towards a video experience that had beautiful visuals and layered on animation and explainers and descriptors, and just taught you visually, so these concepts really sunk in instead of an experience where you're reading or toting around a book.
Right. Now, these travel books that you've referenced, I've never bought a travel book before I traveled somewhere, and I also haven't traveled internationally very much in the last few years. But apparently that's a thing where you have like a book. If you were going to go to Tokyo, you can buy a travel book that's all about that area.
Right. So they call it a guidebook, travel guidebook.
Okay.
And that has really been the medium where people have prepared for their trip in a lot of ways. And they have literally gone and bought a physical book or a PDF. And that is the brunt of the travel content market, if you think about it. So that we think about that as our kind of addressable market. People who prefer a video learning experience over a physical book or or a printed book. So that's how we think about our kind of addressable market.
Yep. But like in today's age, doesn't Tokyo, apparently not, but doesn't Tokyo change enough that if you have a book that's been made, printed, published, out to the public, like isn't it kind of obsolete a couple years after all that work? Or no? I mean, and even with your videos, are you focusing on like some of the core things that are not going to change every year at this particular location and honing in on those?
I think there are some kind of steadfast things that are always going to be important about Tokyo. For example, there are like places that change and businesses that change and those type of things, which really we would leave to a guidebook anyway, because we are not trying to give you a certain recommendation or you have to go here or there or whatnot. We are really interested in like just equipping you for that trip, and so you really just enjoy the trip while you're there. You're not worried. Yes, you will be worried about like what restaurant to go to or how do you find ramen,
Yeah.
But we think about our place is kind of really helping you and teaching you and not like giving you certain recommendations and reviews, because that is transient, I would say.
Okay, gotcha.
And guidebooks do that well. They publish a new book every 2 or 3 years.
Yep. So where can people go? Well, first of all, who's Bright Trip for? Is it for travelers? Is it business to business, or who are your customers?
So it's twofold. So our customers are travelers, those who are going on a trip and enjoy traveling and want a new medium or new way to learn about a place, especially using video. So that is travelers. Also, we've had a lot of so we have our own platform that we provide these courses on, and it's just a great learning experience. We really paid attention to just ways to consume video and to progress through a course that's just really enjoyable. So we've had a lot of companies approach us wanting to use our platform, so basically license our platform. So we kind of envision ourselves also being a way to provide a online course platform for the travel sector.
Okay. What would be? Can you give us an example of someone that might white label or license your product?
Sure. So there's this great company called Remote Year. Remote Year, they basically create an atmosphere where you can go work abroad for a year, and then they provide you housing, they provide you an office space and Wi-Fi, all those kind of components that you'd want for business. And they have kind of a footprint there, so you can kind of drop into a country, and the next year drop into another country without having to really prepare. Yeah, it's a really neat model.
Remote year?
Remote year. Yeah.
Remote year.
Remote year.
And you're not working for
literally
them.
a year of remote,
Interesting.
And their thought around is, work is changing, which it is. And it's not always a requirement to be in an office.
Sure. Well, now we know it's not. At the end of the day, very few people actually have to go into an office to get work done. Although it's still my preference. I don't know how you find it.
No, I agree.
I still like to. Yeah, it's still my preference to come to an office.
So Remote Year is a case where they need to onboard and train their customers. They have a certain process they go through. They wanted a video first platform to do that on, but they needed certain, automation and certain ways to award certificates and to run them through that process. But they are really interested also in providing guides or content about those locations. Really, a travel course was what they approached us with. So it allows us to serve their company with our platform and also license and sell our content to them. So we have kind of a two-layered margin strategy. So that's the ideal scenario where they are licensing our platform on an annual basis, and they're also purchasing our content because it's right in their
Gotcha.
Right in their niche.
Do you suspect that's going to be the real moneymaker for you, those licensing deals like that? Or is it still selling courses directly to the consumers?
Yeah, I think the big opportunity is the travel content market, remaking the travel content market using video. So I think our travel courses one day will take the place of a physical guidebook is the goal.
Yeah.
Don't tell our guidebook friends,
Sure.
but
Yep.
that is the strategy.
Okay. Yep. Well, I mean, we're well on the way already,
Yeah.
These
certain industries just lag behind technology.
Right.
I think if you find one of those, I'm trying to think of it, banking.
Yeah.
So banking so that's why fintech is so big, is because banking has really lagged when it comes to technology. That's a macro example, but I think the travel industry too, travel content market especially, has really not innovated, has not, the most we've innovated, I would say, is a company called Culture Trip. Culture Trip basically is creating a blog with a much better experience. So that just doesn't feel, you remember our earlier conversation, like creating a solution that is magnitudes better. It was really important to us when we created Bright Trip. So I think we feel like Bright Trip and learning through video is a much better learning experience, better experience than holding the book.
Oh, I totally agree. Because it's even, I feel like that's already the case for our generation, like folks you and I's age. But by the time Lincoln's traveling the world, he ain't reading no book.
That's right.
I can promise you that. He's going to need some videos.
It better be in his pocket, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you were going to travel to Cape Town with your wife and kids, and you were looking around for basically resources. You want to learn how to do this trip properly, so you didn't, you wanted to maximize your trip. When was that? And then when did you realize, man, there's not out there what I want to be out there. I'm going to make it. I'm going to create it myself. When was that?
Well, let me back up a layer. So I kind of think about my background. Like, I just love to travel. Like, I think my wife and I, Shannon, I think we call ourselves expats at heart. We would rather be abroad than we would be in the United States. Nothing wrong with the United States, but we just belong abroad. Why am I sitting here right now? I don't know. So I think that's just our kind of way of looking at things. Like, for example, I think I've been to way more countries than I have states, for sure. Like,
really?
By far. Yeah.
That's cool. I love that. Not to interject, but I love that. What I love about that is that here we have this created universe, and inside the universe we have this solar system, and eventually you get to Earth, and then, but it doesn't end there. Like now there's humans on Earth, and now we're in a day and age where we're pretty well resourced. You can fly in a plane, like you can go experience Earth all around it.
So
I feel like I share your passion, but not the experience. So we can work on that the coming years.
Yes, let's do it. Yeah, it's a shame. We were about to travel to Paris with a group, with a couple in our neighborhood who goes to our church. Of course, that got canceled. But yeah, we love traveling with couples to
that was just, by the way, that was just a month and a half ago, right? Because it was over that time we had some travel, and I texted you to wonder what you thought. And you mentioned you were planning to go to Paris. You canceled that?
We canceled it because I knew they were going to close Paris Disneyland. That was the point of going. Wow. Yeah. So we had promised the kids to go to Disneyland.
Okay.
But there's no way I was going to Disney outside or inside the United States. So we were going
okay. Gotcha.
somewhere else.
Nice. So
using it as an excuse to travel.
Yeah. Well, coming back to how we started, you were saying you have a passion for international travel.
So when I think about like my kind of professional background, I think it's a nexus of education and travel. So having my U.S. State Department and White House experiences and having a lot of international experience, and more recently, my educational technology experience has just created, I kind of sat back and said, man, what do I want to do actually? And kind of put that nexus together, and it just made sense. And I think the other factor that really compelled us to create Bright Trip is a guidebook company that we began to work with, Lonely Planet, which is basically the biggest guidebook company. They agreed to partner with us on Bright Trip. So they agreed to send us customers, and customer acquisition is the hardest part about any new business, as anybody who's tried has experienced. So the fact that they are willing to send us customers, which they're going to begin to do in this quarter.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I think that was really interesting to me that we could raise a little capital. I already had the platform. We'd already built the online course platform.
That was with Thrivist?
So the company that I started, Thrivist, was acquired by Ingram Content Group. Ingram was so kind. It gave me that early MVP that we built, gave me that early platform that we tested the Thrivist, the business. They gave that platform back to me. So that allowed us to not spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to build a platform. We already had the platform. My partners were creating the content, and we had a big industry partner willing to go with us. So that risk profile for me, and just managing risk is really important when you're doing a business. That risk profile was really interesting to me, that we could cheaply focus on creating the product, the travel courses, and not acquiring customers or not building a platform.
And when was this? Was 2017?
This is almost a year ago. So this is February 2019 when we started Bright Trip.
Okay. When was your trip to Cape Town when this all started? Or when was it that you started having this idea for maybe this is your next venture?
Yeah. So we traveled to Cape Town in October of 2018.
Okay.
So end of that year. And then came back and really started thinking about it at that time, really, that, November, December, especially when I thought, oh man, it'd been nice to know that especially with travel with kids.
Right.
And Bright Trip has a course, How to Travel with Kids, and it is just filled with such great tips and tricks and learnings around how to travel with kids really well and avoid a lot of pitfalls. And I wish I would have known that, especially smaller kids, because they were obviously a year and a half younger then. So we had just turned 4. So anyway, it would have been helpful, a helpful course to take. And so, and it felt like, there are certain trips, whether it's business trips or whether it's travel with your family or, certain travel just feels like higher stakes. You're not going to a beach to lay there, right? Tokyo is another good example. So you're going there, you've just spent a lot of money to go there. It is a different type of culture, right? So there's a lot of culture risks, if you want to call it that. And very little English is spoken outside of Tokyo. So there's lots of high stakes scenarios that you need to be equipped for. So that's one of the reasons we did Tokyo first.
So so then you had the idea, there was an opening in the market for this. How did you decide on the type of business you would launch? So you decided to go venture back, and why did you choose that versus, well, we mentioned earlier, maybe loaning some money or kind of going low and slow and paying, trying to cash flow it yourself? Like, was it mostly from prior experiences? You thought, okay, this kind of particular way of start launching a business is kind of the path you're going to go down?
Yeah, so we always knew that Bright Trip would be a company that we would try to attract venture-backed money, because I just can't get excited about something that doesn't grow really fast and big, right? I think just a big picture type of guy, so it's really hard to get me out of bed for a lifestyle business. Was not made for it.
Yep.
Especially after I feel like did some big things earlier in life, and met some big personalities and had some big experiences. It felt a bit anticlimactic, So I don't know, just in my bones, I just feel like I have to do big things. To others, it might not seem big.
Sure.
But at least for me internally in my silly mind, it felt big.
Yep.
So I think that was part of it. And being big requires capital.
Yep.
And I think there's enough capital out there, and there's the ability to attract capital that will allow you to grow quickly. That scenario is really interesting to me. So we really envisioned Bright Trip as a very scalable, fast-growing company that might attract a Series A type investment at some point.
I see. And how many courses do you have live now, and where can people go if they're thinking, oh, geez, I'm about to travel. I'd like to see your, or after the virus settles, I want to travel. I want to see that course with how to travel with kids, or the one on Tokyo, or how many courses do you have?
So we have about a dozen courses now. So in a growing library of courses, we're about to add about half a dozen more courses in the next month and a half, 2 months. And we have about a dozen planned. So we have people in the field now as we speak recording courses for Bright Trip.
Are they still able to be out and about? Or?
Yeah. So, for example, we're doing a course on Costa Rica right now. One, because that's a kind of a safer place to travel for Americans. It's not a crazy extension. So we thought, again, we're just testing a lot of scenarios, but this guy was located in Costa Rica. So I think so that wasn't a problem.
Okay.
But we have had to delay some of our travel, because of the virus.
I see. Yep. So the one on Tokyo, for example, is this a 30-minute, 3 hours? What is this? How long is this?
Yeah. So it's about an hour and a half course, long course, and they vary in lengths. And we're testing that too. I mean, we're early stage, so understanding how long form is the content, but it is chunked, I would say, in a lot of ways, which is actually a learning concept that you chunk the content. So, there's maybe you did not want to take the chapter on how to travel to Tokyo with kids. So you don't need to watch that chapter, right? But you do want to watch the chapter on how to navigate the subway system, or how to get from the airport into the city, or how to do ramen, or, the robot culture in Tokyo. These are all things that are chunked out in the course that allow you to go through and watch as much as or little as you want. But at the end, feel equipped.
So is there a learning science? It's better to watch a few 20-minute chapters than it is to sit down and watch 90 minutes of an instructional video. You retain. Is there like a science behind that? There
is, yeah. There's a whole science behind instructional technology and delivering instruction and designing instruction. Bright Trip is obviously not quite as instructional as education might need to be, like higher education or K through 12. So we kind of found a happy medium. So we wanted the concepts to sink in, and which is why we used animation. When I say animation, like beautiful drawings designed on a computer that are fun to watch, but like iterate on concepts. So, for example, a bowl of ramen. We use animation to break apart a bowl of ramen. So what's the broth made out of, and what's the noodles, and what makes, but you can't do those things in a book. Right. At least not well. Yeah. So we can use these new kind of methods to deliver really fun instruction that just make the concept sink in a way that they wouldn't. But you can watch it in a bite-sized way. Yeah, I see. Or consume it in a bite-sized way. So
these videos, you're putting a lot of production effort into these videos.
Yes.
This is not
highly produced.
Yeah, this is not someone kind of sitting in front of a video camera that happens to be in Tokyo or whatever.
Right. They are really well produced. They act more like explainer videos than they do like a camera swiping a beach, or things like that. So it really is highly produced and really, I mean, even the pre-production, writing the script and sourcing the talent and the right person with the experience to actually deliver the course. And then obviously the post-production and the mastering of the course and layering all those important features and animation and visuals on top.
Yeah. Kind of makes you want to watch some of these videos.
Brighttrip.com.
Brighttrip.com?
Brighttrip.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are some of the places that you are most excited to do a travel course on that you have coming up?
Well, having lived in Cape Town, I'm really excited about our Cape Town course. It is going to be beautiful. Cape Town films so well because it's such a beautiful city. And there's so many interesting facets of Cape Town. It has a very interesting history, with apartheid. Navigating that is interesting. It has an element of safety that needs to be addressed. I think we could serve people really well on how to stay safe in Cape Town.
So if an average American is going to go to Cape Town, there's a safety element they got to pay attention to.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. There are.
I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have thought Cape Town. If there's so many, there's so much international travel into there, right?
There is. Yeah. I think it's a developing country, and I think it's different in the sense that it has a complex history that accompanies that. So I think that's something to be aware of as well. But yeah, I think, in a lot of countries outside the United States, just knowing best practices and just kind of on the ground knowledge, kind of street smarts, we can deliver street smarts in a way that makes perfect sense using video. As in terms of, so so in Cape Town, let's use Cape Town as an example. Why is there a street guard outside your car every time you pull up into a restaurant? And what is he doing there? And does he expect to be compensated for watching your car while you're there? There's all these things, all these nuances. And why does everybody have a wall around there, and a security guard outside there? And, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Do I not go to this area if I see that? And, there's just all these dynamics. And this is true for a lot of countries. That those street smarts can be really helpful in helping you have a great trip and not a disaster of a trip.
Yes. That was one of the things I remember being so intrigued by that was so different in Guatemala. I think Mom took us to Guatemala. I was older than Lincoln for sure. I don't know. It was in my teens sometime. But everyone had a wall. And a lot of people put broken glass into the concrete on top of the concrete wall. Hey, it probably works a little bit.
Poor man's barbed wire. Yeah.
Right, exactly, yeah. So do you have a travel guide plan for Cape Town?
We do. So
working on
that will be, So he is there now filming it.
Okay.
Stuck there, in fact.
Okay.
So he's got plenty of time to work on our Bright Trip course to Cape Town.
Oh, wow. He's stuck there.
Yeah. I think he's happily stuck there.
Okay. I'm sure.
Which I would be.
Business is probably paying his expenses, right? He's probably good to go.
That's right. Good thing the dollar is so strong against the South African rand. So that will be published in about a month.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah, so.
How about other locations that you're most excited to do courses on?
So we are looking, again, to take market share from guidebook companies and from other travel content markets. Companies. We have really started to address the major locations first, and this is an experiment. So can we tease off customers who would normally buy a guidebook and instead buy a course to Berlin? So that's a real example. So we are developing a course to Berlin right now. Would you rather buy the book or would you rather buy the video-based travel course? So that will be an experiment in of itself. There's also, can we address for the nervous traveler or for the high-stakes traveler precarious places in the world? You just love to go to Bali, for example, in Indonesia, but Indonesia has its own complexities and it has its own degree of poverty and its own safety element and, on and on and on. Can we address that? And using our core competency, which is video, teach that person, equip that person where they feel really good about taking that trip to Bali, their dream trip, and they feel prepared. That in a way that a guidebook could not deliver.
So do you think that it's feasible to it would be possible for someone who's on the fence about going to a particular location, watches one of your courses and says, you know what, I'm going to do this. And they actually take the trip because they watched your course. That's feasible thing, right?
Yeah, that's best compliment ever,
Yeah.
So I think we would love to be in the travel content funnel. We would love to be in several parts. Inspiration, where we want to inspire you to go to a place that you've never heard about or never seen. And we also want to prepare you, right? So kind of the middle of the funnel. You've decided to go there. You've been inspired to go there. You've decided to go on the trip. Let us prepare you. And then let a partner like Airbnb provide you, or an airline provide you with the practical ways to get you there or to house you while you're there. So I think there's lots of sensible partnerships. And that's a core strategy of ours, is to create these partnerships with the Airbnbs of the world, where it moves Airbnb up in the funnel, so they get exposure earlier in the funnel, and we benefit from their customers and from their eyeballs.
Totally. Airbnb is offering, and they have been for some time, I believe, they're offering like an experience now too, right? Where I don't know about flying you there, but don't they? I mean, don't they offer these experiences where you pay more and like they're rolling out the red carpet for you? Is that a thing?
They do, yeah. So they have the ability to rent a house or rent an Airbnb. But yes, they also delivering these experiences, and usually it's locals who are basically showing you a certain experience, or just hand-holding you through
like
a certain
maybe taking
experience.
you surfing or something like that.
Right. Shark
and it's
diving or surfing.
Yeah, and it's through
or
Airbnb, right?
Flower picking.
Yeah.
It is through Airbnb. Yep. So you book that experience, almost like an event.
Yes.
That you would book an event, but they call it experiences because we value experiences more than events.
Yep.
So in fact, we envision one day that there's a third tab on Airbnb's site that has travel courses.
Oh yeah.
Because it's such a rich way that would fit their customer profile.
What are the two tabs now on Airbnb?
Houses and experiences.
Oh, just those.
Just those two.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And they have big. Airbnb has big plans. I don't know if Corona has changed some of those plans, but they have some real plans to be a end-to-end travel company. So, I mean, they've thrown around they've already bought a hotel, so they have their own hotel chain. They have thrown out the idea of buying an airline and doing an airline. So
that's what I was just wondering, is how long is it going to be before Airbnb gets into the airline industry in a big way? Maybe they're looking at it right now.
I think
There's probably some out there at a pretty good price right now.
Yeah, I think so.
Is there places around the globe that you have not been to yet, but that you most look forward to going to, traveling to, visiting?
I have not gone to Asia as much as I would like. So I think I've not probably have the Asian experience that others would have. So Singapore and Indonesia and some places like that are well traveled. I love off the beaten path type scenarios. So I tend to want to go to places that are not well traveled, and like Paris. Like I was not really actually looking forward to going to Paris because I've been there many times. It's the number one tourist destination in the world, I think, by the numbers. I'd much rather go to some rural or some boutique city, in the countryside than I would, large city. So I think Asia has a lot to offer.
Yeah. Have you been in New Zealand?
I've not been to New Zealand. No.
Okay. I was reading something. Apparently, the tech billionaires are buying places in New Zealand. Like, that's the place to go. If you have a lot of money and you need to escape Armageddon or whatever, it's New Zealand for whatever reason. Do you know anything about this?
I have not heard that, but I go back to the dollar. The dollar has gained so much strength across the board, really. So same thing with the Australian dollar. Our dollar has gained strength and made purchasing property and purchasing, places and real estate in New Zealand much more affordable. And that's happening all around the world. So we're actually living in quite an interesting time that our dollar is so strong that we have more buying power around the world. Yeah,
that is interesting. It was something about the population of New Zealand, where it's located on the globe, and apparently it has less of a chance of like some natural disasters and those types of things, and the population is not too high, so there's like plenty of places to. But they were buying these or installing these like bunk houses, like underground, like end of the world type scenarios. And the article was saying like a lot of the people way up there in tech with a lot of money, there's an inordinate amount of people that have like escape homes in New Zealand for whatever reason.
It's supposed to be a beautiful place. Yeah.
What about jet lag? Do you have a course on jet lag or?
We do have some strategies, especially with our travel with kids, because when you're traveling with kids, jet lag can be
What
a
are
real
some of
bummer.
your thoughts on that, just offhand?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. My co-founder actually has created a whole video about this, and has described strategies really well that we're trying to make into a course now. But I think the important thing is to not give in and take a nap. Get on the ground. Once you're there, go walk to the body of water that's close. Go to the cafe, experience, coffee and the cafe culture. Go to a high place where you can overlook the city, just kind of acclimate yourself. And there's something about doing that I think defeats the jet lag in a way that is not.
And when you say kind of, override the urge to take a nap, do you mean on the plane on the way there or when you get there?
I think when you get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I heard recently is if you do fly internationally, you're trying to mitigate jet lag is to, if you have a body of water, go there, stand there, take your shoes off, put your feet in the soil, and kind of the whole point was get acclimated to and I have no idea what this term means, but the circadian rhythm of the earth. I don't even know what that means. My wife was talking about it. I don't know if it does or not, but their point was get there and immerse yourself into that portion of the earth's, just the whole experience, and immerse yourself
the ebb and flow of
that location on the globe.
Sense.
Yeah.
It's good advice.
Are you familiar at all with Formula One?
Familiar, yes.
Okay.
Follower, no.
Okay. We just became last summer when the show came up on Netflix called Drive to Survive. And, oh man, it's so fascinating. And I'm not a race fan. I've been to a couple NASCAR races because we had a NASCAR race actually about 15 minutes from where I grew up, middle of kind of nowhere, upstate New York. And, but we had a NASCAR track real close, and I took Lincoln, the one out. He probably doesn't remember. He was pretty young. Not a really a race fan, not a NASCAR fan at all. I can't really stand to watch it on TV. The races are too long. It's super boring. It always seemed a little redneck, although I think it's less now. But man, the races in person though were an experience. So I'm attracted to speed and that type of thing. So when this show came out on Netflix, Drive to Survive, man, we got us super sucked into Formula One. It's basically, it's open wheel racing, but it's the top of the game. In the world of racing, Formula One is the best. Okay. By far. Of any kind of racing out there, Formula One is kind of the crown. And there's so much innovation that they're constantly innovating. And things like hybrid vehicles, we got that from Formula One. Traction control, we got that from Formula One. There's all these things now that we have in most cars that has actually come from Formula One because it's so innovative. But anyhow, my point is, it's an international sport, big time international sport. I can't think of any country that gets more than one race per year. So, and I can't think of any offhand, but maybe Italy? No. Yeah. Actually, I think Italy does get two. But, they'll race in the United States of America one weekend. The next weekend, they're racing in another country. The next weekend, they're racing. It's crazy, what it takes to make something like that happen. Yeah. So
logistically,
logistically, it's so crazy. But that's a good example of in an international sport they've just stopped. You can't do it right now. Yeah. So I wasn't sure how the virus is impacting Bright Trip. Are you seeing your sales decline, or are people still buying these courses? Or are you
people are still? So Bright Trip has sold approaching 700 courses in just the past 3 months since we launched. So we've met expectations on our side for the company. Great. So we were excited that people are buying and taking these courses. So a high engagement on the courses, which is really great, and was a kind of a key KPI for us. That was an important indicator that people were taking and watching these courses and benefiting from these courses. But no, we're still selling courses every day. Okay. I think it's a mix of armchair travel, like I mentioned earlier. Yeah. or pent up demand,
Mm-hmm.
and I think just interest to try a new thing. So there is a real market for people who travel. I mean, there's just individuals like me that just really enjoy traveling, and that's just their MO.
Yeah.
So I think that has helped us. I think we've also taken the opportunity, in the case that sales do decrease, that it's just an opportunity to innovate and to look for new partners that might be hungry for new relationships. That's how we think about this period, I think. Really is a big opportunity. We have less pressure from just on the data side, telling our story as a business because of Corona. So we have a bit of a break. So we're able to just not focus on acquiring customers as much as we are about building our library and being ready to, compete when travel comes back into vogue.
Do you have thoughts on when that'll be?
I have to think that June is going to be kind of when we kind of see travel pick up again.
Internationally?
Internationally, yeah.
Okay.
At least I hope so, because I want to go somewhere.
Yeah.
June, I would say, is kind of on our radar for that. But yeah, who knows?
And what are your thoughts on the virus? I mean, it's so unprecedented. Like, what are you seeing happening? Actually, we can get into this. We need to get into this because I want, like, you've worked at the White House before, so I'm curious what your thoughts are on what they're going through. But even before we jump into that, when you say you're hopeful that there's like travel in June, is that because you're looking at China and they kind of got it first, and now they're sort of plateauing and taking that timeline and kind of overlaying that on when it started in America, or like where are you getting that data to say June?
Yeah, it's not based on much data because
okay.
I look at like Spanish flu, which was much more severe. It kind of ran its 3 or 4 month course and then pattered out, and then I think it came back. But I just have to think that this is not so different than the flu. I mean, maybe it obviously is different in a lot of health ways, but I think it might. I hope it does. Anyway, it runs the same kind of course as the seasonal flu. When it starts to die out, kind of in May, June. So, not basing it on anything.
Yeah. What are your personal thoughts on like how serious to take the virus? I mean, a lot of people are taking it serious, which I really appreciate. There's some people that think it's getting way overblown. There's some people say, it's no big deal at all because look at how many people die every year from the flu. Like, where do you kind of land here?
We're sitting here right now, so
yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
Well, I didn't shake your hand.
That's true.
This is the closest we'll get. Huh?
I think that there are some political fears that this could be Trump's Katrina. So if you remember back in the Bush administration, Bush got really, really nailed politically on the Katrina disaster and his response to the Katrina disaster. And I think he even admitted that he was not proactive enough. He was not boots on the ground, ready to be there when that disaster happened. So I think the Trump and the political pundits have taken that to heart in this administration. And I think they have really, really just got in gear and gotten ahead of it. Just as they look like they're taking action, and like a lot of action. Obviously, they closed borders and closed economies. So I think it would be hard to argue that Trump did not do all he could to stop the virus. And I just have to think that Katrina was lingering in their back of their minds that we need to take this seriously or we might pay a political price for it. So that, having said that, I think it is very serious, but I think although people are dying, it's not the Spanish flu. It's not Ebola. So I struggle with how serious to take it. I want to take it serious because there are people risking their lives on the front line, and I want to do my part to make sure it's controlled. But I have not just stopped my life and sat at home like probably as directed. I just don't. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
That's my thoughts.
A couple things that
I worry that it's politically driven. Is my point.
Really? So when you say politically driven, do you mean politically driven to start the thing and to begin with, or do you mean some of these stay-at-home orders, social distancing orders, etc., are politically driven?
I think the doctors have informed the administration, like, this is what you ought to do, and this is the safest route. and you might see a bad situation if you don't follow this guidance. So I think they would rather politically just err on the side of caution than be dinged politically for it.
Sure.
But I think it is serious, and I think we should take it seriously. But
Yeah.
it's hard to just stop an economy.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, this is what's
fortunately, you know what I mean? If it was easy, that'd be scary.
Yeah.
To stop an economy.
Right. Yeah. So, and I think you see China now recovering pretty well. Now that they're 2 months, 2.5 months, behind, or having from the start. So, if China's any kind of gauge, I know they had an authoritarian bent to their response to the virus that we obviously don't have. But
yeah, don't you think that helped them contain it because they just sort of let people know what's going to happen, and it's just over there it's different than it is here. I mean, we enjoy freedoms here that they don't enjoy over there. But do you think that helped them contain the virus because of their authoritarian structure? They could move quicker and with more definitiveness?
Yeah, I think so, for sure. I think they are, as a culture, used to a top-down approach to life, work, culture. So I think when the powers that be hand down an order, they follow it. So I think, obviously, other democracies around the world, just don't work that way, right? So we're bottom up. So they're top down, we're bottom up. So I think, it is different. So I wonder if it will be drastically different in terms of cases and deaths because of that.
Now, calling it the Chinese virus is definitely politically driven, correct?
For sure.
I didn't know this, but the reason World Health Organization was they were really cautioning everyone to not pin this to a nation and so forth. And apparently,
they're afraid of xenophobia. Yeah.
Yeah. What is xenophobia?
Xenophobia means you discriminate based on your race. So if you see a Chinese person, you automatically pin the virus on.
Yeah, well, it's happened in a couple of places. I mean, it's probably happened more than we even know, but I saw one video of this poor guy. This is in America. There's a Chinese dude getting sticks thrown at him. I mean, he's not at fault here. He's probably more American than the people throwing the sticks. But I think that's what they're trying to mitigate against, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And apparently the Spanish flu didn't necessarily come from Spain.
Yeah.
I don't know much about it, but somewhere along the line it picked up the term the Spanish flu, and here we are 100 years later still using it.
Yeah, apparently because Spain stayed out of World War I. So they were the first to report the flu. Although it did not originate in Spain, it probably did not. It probably originated in another country, but for wartime reasons, the other country did not report the flu. But Spain, who was not in the war, reported the flu, so it became known as the Spanish flu.
Oh, fascinating. Huh. Well, school's out. There's your history lesson for the day, Lincoln. I am curious what you think is, what does it look like to be at the White House right now? Man, I tell you what, I'm glad I'm not running a city or a state or a country right now. I cannot imagine.
I think it probably looks like a lot of businesses. Honestly, a lot of businesses are just coping and are in disarray or facing new paradigms and new challenges. I bet it's the same way. I think about after 9/11, because I was interning about, I guess, 8 months after 9/11, 6 to 8 months after 9/11. And I think roles had shaken up. Drastic changes had happened as a result. New people were in charge of different things and learning new roles and having new systems and methods. And I think another consequence is, I think as an intern, for example, I was all of a sudden handed responsibilities that you would never hand an intern. So the younger people the responsibilities got pushed down onto the younger crowd or the less experienced crowd and had to grow up quick. Because I think, at some point, because of the 9/11, I was in charge of writing the president's briefs to wherever state he traveled that was in our region that we were responsible for. I would never be writing a brief that the president would see before that. So I think about
what was in the brief.
We had a political brief that we provided to the president when he traveled to our states.
Okay.
The office that I interned in was the Office of Political Affairs.
Okay.
So it was Karl Rove's office. If you know who Karl Rove is, he's the kind of the political genius.
It's a huge name.
Yeah. So I interned in his West Wing office. So we prepared the president for the political dynamics that were on the ground. So who was running for election and what's the hot topics and, coal in West Virginia or steel in West Virginia and, the Rust Belt dynamics here or in Tennessee. It's, whatever it is.
Would you do that if you traveled internationally too, or just national travel?
Just national travel. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were a political affairs office. So we really helped equip him politically. And that's also something that changed with the Bush administration is every decision was political, just like the Obama administration, just like the Trump administration. There is a political vetting process. So every decision, domestic decision, gets run through that political office. So there's this political layer that everything gets filtered through in ways that I think other earlier administrations did not happen.
Oh, and was that because we're just getting smarter? We realized how powerful the people are, and you need to position yourself and your party in a way that is positive, or that you can kind of spin. Is that why? Or?
I think the fact of the matter was a president is never not running for reelection or not trying to elect a coalition that will further his priorities. So I think they just got the Bush administration with Carl just got really intentional about that process and what that meant for in his first term the reelection, or in the second term building a Congress that would help him further his policies or nominate the right Supreme Court justice or appoint judges that or approve judges that would.
Was Carl sort of the brainchild behind that, running everything through the political lens?
I think he's really credited for that.
Really?
Yeah, just in a way that had not happened in the past, and being very data driven and using technology to change how campaigns are run. Carl is really the proponent of using technology to really change the landscape and start running for reelection on day one. I mean, they started building, teams in states really, really early in the campaign, or in the first part of the administration. So and then obviously the decisions that were made were vetted politically.
I see. What was Karl Rove's official role, when you were interning at the White House?
At the end, he was deputy chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, which is a fairly senior position. I think initially he was the assistant to the president for political affairs or something like that, which is also senior. But he really helped the president get elected. He was the campaign director, I guess you call him, the director of the campaign. So he became just the domestic guy who informed the president on all things politics.
And wouldn't some say that he sort of ran George W. Bush? Like, had inordinate amount of influence?
There was, they called him Bush's brain, which is not true. I would disagree with that entirely. Having been around both of them in a lot of circumstances, especially when there's international, Bush really made the decisions. I mean, absolutely. I mean, he wrote the book called Decisions Points. That was his.
It's a great book too. I read it years ago.
Yeah,
Really
but
enjoyed it.
he ran the meetings. He was making the decisions and was very confident in his leadership. And everybody worked for him. It was quite clear that everybody was serving at the pleasure of the president, and that he was in charge and was making the decisions. And it was his philosophy, his leadership philosophy. It was his decision-making philosophy. It was his integrity. It was all those things permeated from the leader throughout the administration. So I think it would, I guess it was trying to make Bush look, silly or was belittling him. But my firsthand experience, I would refute that notion.
What's Karl Rove doing today? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I think he does. He has an article in the Journal or editorial in the Journal often.
Okay.
And I think he is a contributor on Fox and some of these other news organizations. I think he writes quite a bit as well. I think he just wrote a book a couple of years ago. So, but yeah, more than that, I don't know.
What when you're writing these briefs, where are you getting your information from? Do you have someone who's feeding you information, or do you have to go look for it, or how are you getting that info?
Yeah, so we talk to members of Congress, we talk to leadership on the ground, we talk to state leaders, we talk to grassroots type individuals. And just kind of got the intel.
Just seeing what's going on in their state. What are the issues? Right. So you were talking to like some Congress men and women to prepare these briefings?
Yeah, these members of Congress would come often to the White House, and we'd have breakfast or lunch in the White House mess. And in fact, I specifically remember meeting with Mike Pence when he was in Congress. He came and we had breakfast in the White House mess. I was soaking up every minute, of course. So that happened often.
Do you talk to him yourself?
No. I spoke to him at the time, but I was pulling for Mike Pence. I really liked Mike Pence. I think he's just an upstanding guy and just a really good guy, and has his head on straight. But anyway, that happened often. And we'd also talk to cabinet secretaries. So, for example, Secretary of Agriculture and his staff about various policies that were impacting the president politically on the ground.
When you
lots of input.
How much time did you get with Bush? I mean, you've met him a few times, correct?
Yes, many times. So the brunt of my exposure to the president was anytime there was an international visitor at the White House. I would be the person providing direction to the president or briefing the president on who this is or making introductions or logistical decisions about where they'd go. So he and I never sat down and had a chat.
Never had a drink.
Oh, yeah. No, he never
He
did
hasn't
that.
had you out
He
to his
actually
ranch?
doesn't drink.
He doesn't drink?
He doesn't
that's
drink.
right. I forgot. That was in decision points, too, because he struggled with alcohol at one point.
Right.
And he just quit.
Early in his life, yeah.
Yeah.
He just, quit.
So he would not drink any alcohol, nothing.
Yeah. So, in fact, part of the job of the State Department is to provide our dietary restrictions for our leaders. And his restrictions were no alcohol every time. Yeah. So he didn't do that.
Did you see alcohol being limited at functions that he was at, or not necessarily?
No, it wouldn't have been appropriate to do that. It would not have been a good host, I guess, too.
Sure. Yeah. If you had foreign dignitaries and so forth.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
What were some of your favorite memories from when you were there?
Probably, I feel like the travel abroad was so fun. So there's a type of visit abroad called a presidential delegation. So a presidential delegation is the president chooses not to attend this event, somewhere in the world. Usually it's a ceremonial event, and instead appoints a cabinet secretary or sometimes a former president to go on his behalf, because the diplomatic relationship is important, and he wants to. The U.S. needs to have a presence beyond just our ambassador. So those were some of the funnest times. I remember my first trip was my boss walked around the corner and said, "Hey, you're going to Kosovo," and I couldn't even point it out Kosovo on a map for sure. But I was thrilled. So we got on a military jet. We took all these special air missions on these various places and went to Kosovo. It was a great delegation. I know the Kosovars really appreciated it. The funny component about that, and it was such a perfect kind of training wheels moment. So the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development of HUD, Alfonso Jackson, was the secretary leading that delegation. So we get there and we do our thing, and we go back to the airport to get on the jet, and the pilots told us, or the Air Force was saying, "Hey, there's a hard brake, quote unquote, hard brake on the plane, so it's going to be a little while." So essentially, the axle broke, or I don't know whether I don't know if there's an axle on a plane, but something bad happened, and so we had to deliver this to the secretary. So he got really angry, and I'm sorry, your military jet is broken. So here we are. There's what was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon there. So it was like, early in the morning here. Or I'm sorry, it was early in the day there. So it must have been, early in the morning here. So the secretary was getting irate and that we couldn't solve the problem. And he threatened to call Donald Rumsfeld, and we're like, no, you do not need to call the Secretary of Defense. Like, we will resolve this. So we called the Air Force and said, hey, you guys have a flight that we could just hop on and, whatever. So turns out this admiral gave us his small jet, took us to Ramstein Air Force Base. Ramstein Air Force Base is in Germany. So we jumped on this really large medevac flight, a C-7, I think it's like those really large planes, but it was full of wounded soldiers. So coming back from Iraq. So it was a sobering flight back. And
wow.
we I think they even waited for us. It was terrible.
Wow.
Yeah. So they had all these wounded soldiers.
How many would have been in your party? 15, 20? Or?
No. So we were 8.
Oh, okay.
6 to 8.
Okay. And who was the senior position? Who was the senior guy or gal in your party?
The Secretary of HUD. Yeah. So Housing and Development. Yeah. So Cabinet Secretary level.
Okay. Gotcha.
But it would be all kinds of all kinds of individuals. The administration, I thought, and I think other administrations have done this as well, picked a good delegation that represents the United States well and is appropriate for the ceremonial event abroad. So it would be a mix of, a notable leader, usually a former president or cabinet secretary, but also a really interesting mix of Americans. So, for example, we went to the inauguration of the president of the Dominican Republic, and Ernie Banks came with us. Because he's a big baseball player, and the Dominican Republic is known for their baseball. And
absolutely.
So
So they would do things like that is clearly like for just fitting the right person for the occasion.
Right.
I see.
Almost like a diplomatic gesture. Like, we're sending Ernie Banks as a part of this delegation because it's sending the right message, and we wanted to honor you, Mr. President, and your inauguration.
That's cool.
Yeah. So.
Did you intermingle with those wounded soldiers coming home?
A lot, yeah.
Oh, yeah? You could have conversations with them?
Had conversations. Yeah, the ones that, some were, of course, not awake.
Yeah.
But, it was it was actually really fitting because the secretary was irate. But once he boarded that plane, there was such a sense of humility that it helped us just logistically. But it kind of put him into a place where he needed to be.
Do you miss working in the government?
There are times where I miss it, because it felt very meaningful, and it felt big in that you were, especially when I was coordinating like visits like abroad, and then also when you're executing a visit from a head of state or head of government, so a president or prime minister or a king or queen, it felt really meaningful in that you were contributing to diplomacy. Like in technical ways, you had a diplomatic passport. You were playing the role of a diplomat. So because you were the main linchpin that made that visit work or not work, you were literally executing that visit, and you were the main U.S. liaison. It felt really meaningful and intentional. And honestly, it was their first diplomatic experience with their visit to the United States.
Oh, wow.
So I miss it from that perspective.
It seems like it would be such a rush, like to be involved at that level, to be close to the president of the United States, the most powerful person in the world, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's phenomenal.
And then you have other nations, like heads of states, like national leaders who are going to come and visit your national leader, and you're involved with that somehow, and you can kind of see democracy and like world governments in person. It seems like it'd be a rush.
Yeah, it was a front row seat to international relations, honestly. Which is why I went after that and got a master's in international relations. I kind of got the book learning after the real world learning.
Right.
But yeah, you saw how diplomacy happened.
Yeah.
You were on the front row. I remember, for example, just like perspectives it's all life's about perspectives, right? Same is true for visiting heads of state. So I think the president of Nigeria was visiting, and he was about to enter the Oval Office. He was dressed from head to toe in his garb. I mean, he looked like an African leader. Yep. Which was what he thought was appropriate, which was perfectly appropriate. But the Oval Office door swung open, And President Bush was surprised, and he said, "Hey, look at you!" And
It's not, he was not expecting that.
I thought to myself, I should have told him that
Right.
this was going to be. He might not have responded that way, but yeah, it was fun to watch all that happen on the and actually see the
I'm
dialogue.
I'm sure. So in a case like that, why were you present?
You were basically leading them through the White House, and
You were?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and just kind of literally making the visit work.
Okay.
All the questions that come up, and what do I say to the president, and what's the agenda for the meeting? All those things are communicated ahead of time.
Yep.
Really start with a visit to the U.S. to the embassy in Washington.
Okay.
So that visit starts with what are the White House objectives for the visit,
Okay.
and what are the visiting head of state or head of government, what is their objectives? So it gets fleshed out. So you're really there from start to finish, all the way from thank you for coming.
Wow. And are those visits tend to be 1 or 2 days, or 1 day, or 3 days? How long are those?
Yeah, it depends. There's 3 levels of visits. There's a state visit, which is the highest level of visit. It's like, you get the state dinner and you get the White House lawn ceremony.
That only happens for state visits.
That only happens for state visits. Yeah.
And what like a handful a year? How often does that happen?
Very few.
Okay.
I think maybe 3 is the most I saw when I was there.
3 a year.
3 a year.
And that's going to be
Maybe 4.
the president of another country?
Yep, or head of state or head of government. Yeah. So,
Okay.
So I had the Queen. If you remember telling you, I had the Queen's visit when she visited. That was a state visit.
Oh yeah.
I think most recently gosh, I hadn't even looked, but I think Trump recently had France was our last state visit.
What's that guy's name?
I could have told you.
I want to say M something, but I don't keep up with that
Sarkozy.
too much. Oh, it was? Okay.
President Sarkozy, right?
Okay.
The French prime minister.
Probably, I have no
French
idea.
president, rather. Yeah. So yeah, there's a state visit and then there's a working level visit. So you're actually having a meeting with the president. That's a working level visit. So it's not the pomp and circumstances, not the high level sought after state visit, but it's a working level visit. And then there's a private visit where there's no government interactions. The head of state or head of government's coming there to meet with the business or to go shopping.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So on a private visit, that's still going to be with the president?
No. So there's no government interactions with a private visit. It literally is just
gotcha.
a private visit. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I see. And would you be involved with those too?
sometimes if it was high profile enough. So I think about when Prince William came on a visit. We were involved because we wanted that to go well.
But he didn't necessarily come to the White House at all.
Yep, he had no government interactions. He did not meet with the vice president. I think he was coming there to speak at a nonprofit event or something.
I
like that,
see. Okay. So, what I've been curious about is on those state dinners or even like the working visits, how much of business actually gets done on those visits? I guess I always pictured like that's more for the photo ops and the handshakes and stuff, but the real business gets done over the phone or behind closed doors or through other people. But maybe it's wrong.
I think you'd be right. Yep. So that all the decisions and all the conversations happen before, usually at a working level. So the state visit is to say, okay, we agreed on this, treaty, for example, or this agreement, and then the signing happens. We had a lot of signings. Signings would happen at the during the visit. So yeah, you're right. All that stuff gets fleshed out before, at least in the Bush administration. I'm not sure. It might not be true in the Trump administration.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on our government and democracy has been largely unchanged for years and years and years, right? I mean,
I'd say so,
we've not changed much. Does this still work fine in this day and age we find ourselves now, or do we expect to see any like big level changes with the way we do government?
That's a big macro question. I think if you think about how the founders framed and envisioned, I think there's no changes that need to be made. I think the Constitution as written by the founders, plus the what do you call it? not the preamble, but the amendments that were added.
Oh, right.
Bill of
Yep,
Rights. Bill of
yep,
Rights.
yep.
I think that is a perfect document and that deserves very little changing. That's just my personal, because there's a lot of folks who believe it's a living, breathing document that needs to be reflected. And I would disagree. I think fundamentally the document has steered us right, and the core values instilled in that document should stay as they are. So from that sense, I think we do not need to change. But yeah, I worry about, in terms of government, the growing disparity between rich and poor. I think we might see that end badly at some point, and history has proved that out too. I think we might see political change because of, especially as we see, debt burdens rise and credit cycles boom, and bust. I worry that, that might end badly, that the contrast, especially with China's influence, that we might see crazy things happen.
Now, if that happens, is it the people rising up and causing, change, or you're saying we see this disparity coming and so different parties are in power, or how would the change happen?
Well, I think the most reasonable, and what a lot of folks had talked about, was Bernie Sanders, who had a socialist bent to him, coming in and actually starting to redistribute wealth. I don't think he was promising that, but I think it's not hard to imagine a trajectory towards
right.
So the French Revolution, for example, that was a redistribution of wealth, right? They killed the wealthy people and redistributed the wealth amongst the population to some degree. I'm not sure if it actually went down that way, but that was the onus of the French Revolution. And history seems to repeat itself with these, as you get a disparity of incomes and rich and poor, and that often it ends badly. So, so in terms of addressing that, I don't know.
It's a big topic, and one of the things that's unfortunate about that topic is it's political right away. Like you can't have a conversation really about helping the poor, even in Nashville, without it getting political kind of quick. Which is it seems. Look, these people need help. Like why does that have to get political right away? But I guess at the end of the day, like a lot of major topics are political.
Yeah, for some reason, money is touchy. No matter at what level, really. I don't know if you've experienced that in business, but you have what you think is a great relationship, and there's a money problem some way that can be solved, but it just does strange things to people.
Yes.
So
100%.
So I don't know. Maybe that's a small example, but it could be extended into a national problem.
Yeah. I totally agree. What would you be paying attention to right now? Like if you were running the country, what are you thinking about? What are you paying attention to? Like do you have thoughts on that? Like how are you staying up to speed pretty well with what's going on politically?
Man, I feel like I am so far removed from politics these days that I really haven't.
Okay. Because I don't follow it very much at all.
I feel like my mind shift has moved away from politics and towards business and towards people. Before, I was highly political. I even worked on the president's campaign and his reelection campaign for a year, and at the national headquarters. Yeah, and so very political. Even in college, was very, very political and ran the college Republicans, for example, was president of that organization. But yeah, I think I have moved mentally away from politics in a lot of ways and have cared less about that and more about people and business.
Yeah, I mean, that's been my philosophy for some time but do you pay attention at a high level to see how it might affect Bright Trip or, you or your family, or like you paying attention a little bit. I think I sometimes fall in the error of not paying attention really enough, to be honest with you. Because generally speaking, I'm like, well, it doesn't really affect me that much. My own decisions are going to be really what affects me, and I'm just not paying a lot of attention to it historically.
Yeah, I feel like I pay a lot of attention to the economics and what the Fed is doing, and the market's response, and corporate debt and things like that I could see squeezing us in the future, or squeezing our market in the future, or inhibiting venture capitalists to do certain things, or for funding to drive. So I think about it from that angle. I think from the raw politics, I don't pay as much attention. Short of really, in other words, for me, it's economic.
Right.
I really, the Journal. So it's probably the most politics I get on a daily basis.
Do you get the Wall Street Journal? What is it? Yeah, I get that. I get that too. Do you still get the old newspaper?
I do. I got it in my bag.
The actual newspaper?
The actual newspaper, yeah. I got to hold it in my hands.
Dude, I love that. See, there was a season up until just the last year and a half, 2 years, where I was not getting news online. I've never actually got my news online. I mean, I'll occasionally Google something. I Google things a lot, quite a lot. But sometimes I'll Google something that's news related. Coronavirus, for example. I'm checking on that every day. Use Twitter for that now too. But there was a period where I really wasn't getting news. And honestly, I didn't really care. Like, it was just, if something was important enough, I felt like it would get talked about, I'd hear about it and so forth. But about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I switched back to getting the Wall Street Journal because and sometimes, man, I was even reading the paper that happened to be a day old. I didn't really care. I was tired. I was in a season where I was tired of just flash in your face information. Everything is so important. Read this now. Get this now. Did you hear this? Did you hear that? And I was just looking to slow it down and see what's important. I still wanted to stay kind of up to speed with what's going on, but I wanted to hold it in my hand. I wanted the paper again. I know this is probably like a thing of the past or whatever, but I just wanted to go back to the newspaper.
Yeah.
And to this day, that's how I like to read that thing once a day.
Yeah.
And I don't like the interruptions of pop-up ads, of clickbait, like all these things that distract you. I just like the newspaper.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think about the motivations behind online news. So they want you to click, right? So that model, that business model, probably leads them to maybe estrange the news or at least portray the news in a certain way, or offer you certain news that they know you'll click on because it's monetized that way.
Yes.
The Journal, for example, is monetized in a different way. That's a subscription. So their motivations are different than online sales. So I think just from that perspective, I enjoy the Journal. I think it's good. Anyway. But I worry about the motivations behind. I mean, same thing like YouTube.
Yep.
When we're talking about that model incentivizes different behavior.
Yeah. Did you see, Lincoln? Get the second paper down. Just set the phone down for a second. I think it's the second one down there, second or third one down. It has. Yeah, grab it right there.
Today's.
No, it was not today's. Nope. Get the one down below that, please. It had the
unemployment red line.
Yeah,
yes,
that was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
I know.
I mean, I get this at the end of my driveway, and I'm looking at it. This was Friday, March 27th, and headline is U.S. virus cases, jobless rate soar. And I'm looking at this. I'm like, okay, weekly initial jobless claims, 2008. Here it spikes up above 500K in a week. I'm like, oh, okay, it's going. And I was like, what is this? What is this? And that's the spike from March 15th to 21st. It's crazy.
I think the visual on that is so interesting, especially in a paper, right? So
exactly.
It does not come through online. I think it would.
Exactly. Right, so I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, they really did a good job on how they positioned this, because honestly, if they had put this thing, I mean, this barely fits above the fold.
Yeah, they nailed the format.
They really did. They really did. I like the smell of the newspaper. I like holding it in my hand.
I'm with you.
I like the fact that, here's what I really like about it is, from the time I pick it up to the time I put it down, nothing changes. Because I need context. And I need to start, and if things are going to change as I'm reading something or looking into something, it's too much. I need it to be steady. It's why I have a hard time like using a tablet or an iPhone for certain things. I need a computer. Like, I need a bigger screen. So I'm just the way I'm.
Well, I think
wired.
too. Like I think about the content in the journal is not knee jerk.
Right.
Even though it's on a daily basis.
Yes.
Online's on a moment by moment basis.
Yes. 100% agree.
At least some thought has been put into the content itself.
Exactly.
And it's not knee jerk.
Yes. I can't imagine working in a
bombastic,
paper. Right. I totally agree. How do you like get all the best information? And I mean, you must be working all night, all the time.
They must have
for
some
that
kind of method.
Early deadline, and it seems
it's a business
I'm glad,
unto itself.
Yeah, it really is. I'm glad people do it.
Skill set. Yeah.
It seems difficult.
Yeah.
What is this book you have here?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of the Puritans. I don't know if you read the Puritans.
Yeah, me too. Well, right behind you, The Valley of Vision is one of my favorite.
Sure,
actually, that's my most referenced book probably of all time.
So I picked this up and put it down from time to time, but this book is called A Sure Guide to Heaven. How could you not read that, right? A Sure Guide to Heaven. That's like clickbait back in the Puritan times. So this is written by a fellow named Joseph Alleine, and he was a Puritan writer. But if you want a book that is not an arduous cover-to-cover read to get the point, he asks very pertinent questions and makes very pertinent points that basically test your heart to know if your conversion is true.
Really?
Yeah, and it's loaded.
And that's the purpose or the point of the whole book?
Yeah. So it goes from, mistakes about conversion, for example, as a chapter, the nature of conversion, what it looks like in reality, why it's necessity of conversion, why it's necessary, the marks of the unconverted. I mean, so I think I've dog-eared a page just to say how hard-hitting some of these things are and have made me think about, man, is my Christianity weak? Is it soft? Am I not like giving it what it deserves, right? The energy that it deserves. So this is the instrument. So I think he's talking about the real instrument is the word. Is the kind of the subtitle of this
Scripture. Yep.
Right. Yep. Scripture. Yeah. The word being Scripture. And it says, "Come from your knees to the sermon, and come from the sermon to your knees. The sermon does not prosper because it is not watered by prayers and tears, nor covered by meditation." So imagine how many times you come home from church and like, that sermon was just okay. Or, I didn't get a lot out of that sermon. Or like such a typical response, like, let's just go to lunch kind of thing.
Sure.
This, to me, kind of lands on me like, it's not our pastor's fault. I mean, he delivered the word that was on his heart. It is our fault that we did not soak that sermon and prayer and condition our own hearts to receive that scripture and then come home and cry over it and meditate over it. I mean, so it's just a level of seriousness that I feel like we don't have today, but that's why I just love the Puritans. It's just
I agree. What's the
gravity around
Yes, I totally agree. What's the copyright on that book? When was it written?
Oh man, let's see.
That's the first thing I do with any book.
1671.
No way.
First published
1671. So 1671 was, you had the Great Awakening kind of coming through, like the Northampton revival and all of that, kind of hitting the Northeast in America in the early 1700s, I think. 1740, I believe.
Like 1749.
Yes, maybe.
The Great Awakening, is it?
Yep. It was
Jonathan Edwards and
like Jonathan Edwards in the Northeast, and that really kind of was just a wildfire. I believe around 1740, 1750.
Okay, yeah.
So this is
1671. Yeah.
Oh man,
it's beautiful.
That is beautiful. What other books by the Puritans have you read or would you recommend?
I like Jonathan Edwards a lot, of course. Classic. I also I have a book that is called Stories of Revival. It's a big, humongous book. But I just love the stories that are retold or, written down about what conversion looks like during the Great Awakening or during some of these revivals.
Yeah, me too.
It's just so fascinating. So That's the most recent kind of
Okay.
book I've read. But I think I pick them all up, and I think they're all just great. Yeah.
There's probably the most well known, when you say book written by a Puritan, was
Pilgrim's Progress,
yeah,
John Bunyan.
yeah, he was a Puritan, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's probably the most well known. But what I see with the Puritans is I picture them as highly intellectual, very smart, disciplined, like with a heart for God. Though I think when people think like intellectual, smart, disciplined, a lot of times like cold, like I don't want to be just part of that. But they were passionate for their faith. Like they went hard after God.
Yeah, they were serious. Yeah,
They were serious. They were serious Christians.
yeah. And sure in their conversion. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it also too, like I think about this a lot. Like it feels like when you scroll through Twitter or when you're around your buddies, or maybe not, but it just people feel soft these days. Yeah,
Yes.
it really bothers me. Like I really, not that I'm not soft, because I'm sure I am, but I really enjoy the rugged individualism and the pain tolerance level, whether it's physical or mental or just you're just strong, you know?
Yes.
I feel like we've lost that. And I think
I agree.
Puritans spiritually do that really well.
Yes.
And they're just rugged just because the times required you to be rugged.
Exactly.
But I feel like we've lost that.
But don't you feel like people feel soft because they are? And I would totally lump myself in there too. But don't you think it's more than just a feeling?
I think
don't you think that's the state that we're in?
Yeah. And I think the people are being encouraged and compelled to share. It's coming through as, I guess they're encouraged to show their vulnerabilities. And and I think mental health is a real concern. But I think sometimes it might be that you're weak and you're using it as an excuse to, that's your crutch, you know?
Yeah.
That's not true in every case by any means, but
Sure.
and sometimes I hate the soft, you know, and fragile. It just, like, I'm not like this boot wearing rugged cowboy, but like, I'm not that either.
Yeah, exactly.
So I worry about that.
Speaking of revival, right up there is a book on that second shelf. You want to grab that? You can keep your headphones on because this will go with you. Second shelf down, right in the middle, it says Jonathan Edwards on it. Jonathan Edwards on revival. Up one, go up one. Right there, your finger's right at it. To the left, Jonathan Edwards on revival. I think Ray might have recommended this book. And it's Jonathan Edwards on revival, a narrative of surprising conversions. It's almost like three books in one. The distinguishing marks of a work of the Spirit of God and an account of the revival of religion in Northampton. Oh, here it is, 1740, 1742.
Okay.
But this,
I wrote a research paper on the Great Awakening one time, and I thought that was the date.
Oh, wow.
I was for the longest time, and still am, fascinated by the Great Awakening. It is so interesting.
Well, here's what
inexplicable apart from
yes,
you know, God intervening.
Yes. Well, this book was the first, it's the first book I had really read on it. And so I wasn't super familiar. This helped me get familiar with it. I'm reading another one right now that Ray recommends that's, what is it called? The Inextinguishable Blaze, I think. I just put on my Instagram a couple of days ago. And while this book focuses on the revival in Northampton, the Inextinguishable Blaze, it talks more about the Great Awakening globally, you know, in other countries, not just in America. But one of the things that stands out to me, and I'm about a third of the way through that book, is there's clear patterns so far that I remember from this book too. Repentance. Like it seems hard pressed to find a revival without repentance. Repentance was the lead domino here. Repentance was the lead domino in at least every story so far in this other book that I'm reading. Repentance. And second, though, is, and I don't know that these are in order of importance, but preaching. Like these guys went out and preached. You want to talk about soft people? These preachers were not soft, man. I mean, they were traveling at personal cost. Some of them making, very little, and And I mean, I'm not talking about like jumping in an air conditioned car and driving around. Like they are traveling and it's just difficult. And they are preaching and they're preaching like multiple services a day sometimes. So, and just the power of preaching in a revival. But the third one that I didn't see coming.
And these sermons would go on for
some
5
would.
hours plus.
Yeah. Absolutely. Some would. And just in the book I'm reading now, there's an account of Jonathan Edwards sitting in on another preacher. I can't think of who it was, but Jonathan Edwards, like just weeping through the sermon, and that like, and then it wasn't just him, but like it was also him. You know what I mean? Like here's this very intelligent, capable preacher whose heart is being moved by the preaching of another man. But the third theme that I didn't see coming is education. In the Great Awakening in America, education, like those guys were passionate about education. There was one guy, I'm trying to think who that was, but in a span of like 4 or 5 years, the guy started so many schools. I want to say there was 1,000 people enrolled in the schools that he started. I know that for it was 1,000, and I don't think it was 1,000 schools. So it was 1,000 people had enrolled, but like they were not just preaching at churches, but they were changing the landscape of education, and that I don't know that a lot of people think about that anymore as it relates to revival.
Yale, for example, has its roots in Christianity. Was started with that mission. And I think Brown, Harvard has, so I think again and again you see these, it's
But
the great institutions of today that are born out of Christianity.
Yeah, it's true. But just the idea of repentance, because, probably Ray more so than anyone else has, Ray believes that a revival can happen in Nashville and spread. He really and I do too, sort of. You know what I mean? Like I haven't seen it in my lifetime. I mean, he's seen a revival in California in the '60s with the Jesus movement, and I haven't seen that. And I know God can do anything. But Ray's influence has prompted me to be agitated for revival again now in our city, in our state. It can spread from there. And look, man, there's no reason that can't happen. But repentance, like being convicted in our heart of our sin, we're less good than we think.
Yeah, I feel like we don't feel our need like they felt their need.
I agree.
And maybe that's because we're too comfortable. So maybe Corona propels us towards feeling our need and our humanity.
Maybe. Yeah. And when you feel your need and realize your depravity and your sinfulness, then the mercy of God move your heart. But if you don't feel you're that sinful, that needy, well, then the mercy of God it's not all that relevant,
right?
Yep. How long have you had this book, A Sure Guide to Heaven?
Oh, man, I think probably a decade.
Oh, really?
And picked it up, put it down. Yeah, it's just so another David Brainerd is another really good author that makes you feel crappy in a good way. You know what I mean?
Was he a Puritan?
He was a Puritan as well.
Oh, okay.
He's really good.
Okay. Well, great, man. What else you want to talk about?
I came kind of prepared to talk about kind of how you might innovate.
Yeah, I'd love to.
In this kind of climate.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is obviously from a technology perspective, but I think a lot of folks out there probably have good ideas and are challenged by, will it work, and is it a good idea? So, I just want to encourage folks who listen that you ought to innovate. And I think there is like crazy opportunities to innovate in this climate, assuming that Corona creates a downturn and creates maybe some economic distress. I think, I first of all, I kind of wanted to give some just thoughts on like why you might start a business and kind of why I think other companies have worked. And then I think some kind of like practical things to look for in this kind of climate. So I don't know. When I think about starting a company or innovating a company, obviously it needs to solve a problem, but I think it can also create an opportunity. So I think about like Facebook is actually a super obvious example. So we as startups anyway are taught to solve a problem. You got to solve a problem, which is true, and I think a lot of companies do solve a real problem, but I think a lot of problems have been solved. There obviously are problems that have not been solved and big problems, but I think about the opportunities you could create. So if you ask Facebook, hey, what problem are you solving, Facebook? I mean, they're not solving a problem, right? They're just creating an opportunity for us to connect socially and create an industry.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think
that's a good point because a lot of people do focus in on what problem you're solving. Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah, I just feel like don't let that be a stopper.
Right.
Because I feel like if you feel like you're not curing cancer, it's not worth starting a company.
Yes.
Which I would argue is not true. Especially if you're think about the music industry. So are you surprised that Apple is the biggest distributor of music? I am. Why isn't it Tower Records or Sony? It's because they had a different perspective on the music industry, and they built, iTunes to address it. So there's that times a million of other scenarios that could happen and create an opportunity. So, but I think a couple principles that have helped me to kind of think about, could this company be valuable? So I think there's like 3 drivers of like what makes a business worth doing. So 1, it makes a business or a person money. So money really is the driver, right? As much as we want to think, wouldn't this be nice or wouldn't this improve? I think making money is the key driver. So I think about, Etsy. So Etsy works because people put their crafts or whatever they make on. I've never been to Etsy, but they put their product on Etsy, and it's a marketplace for their crafts. So they're reaching customers and making money in ways that they couldn't. So Upwork is the same example. Upwork is a place where you can go and if you're a project manager, you can go get hired as a project manager. So you're driven there, and that business works because you're making money, or you're making. In other words, Etsy works because it enables people to make money.
Right.
Same thing is true for businesses. If you allow businesses to make money with your solution, then that is something that could be really valuable. And secondly, I think save people money. So you make people money or save people money. So I think about Groupon or that little application called Honey. It is saving people money. So that's 2. And then 3, I think about like drastically improving how something is done. So I think BrightTrip actually kind of falls in that category, although we have a component that we're launching to allow people to contribute their own courses and make money. So that's interesting and creates a network effect in positive ways. But I think we are thinking, and I think Slack is another example of that, right? Slack or Zoom. Slack is a much better way to communicate in a business environment than email was.
Yeah.
So if you can drastically improve how something is done, I think that's another reason to start a business. So I just thought it was that structure helped me.
Yes.
Brass tacks when I was creating a business, that this is the paradigm or this is the qualifications that could make a big business.
Yes.
So I think that helped me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really from a technology perspective, and less from a lifestyle or a small business perspective. But
right.
Those 3 things, I think, that really helped me. But I think in today's climate, I think I go back to my original point. I think on our last podcast, I think I mentioned this way, but like make sure that your idea is like magnitudes better. It cannot be a mediocre idea. It needs to be magnitudes better. It needs to be 10 times better than the way it's been done now, because changing behavior is really, really hard to do. So I think that's just as a precursor important. But I think, if we see economic downturn, I think we will see an opportunity to buy distressed assets. So I think if you're a small business owner or you're a technology company that has done things right and has cash in the bank and has a clean balance sheet and, has a low burn, I think there's like some incredible opportunities. I think a practical example might be if you own a technology company and you now could go buy a list from one of your competitors that is distressed, and they might be open to sharing their customer list. So you just acquired, customers that would cost you probably $100 a customer for a fraction of that.
Yep.
So that's just a simple example.
Yep.
I think just looking out for distressed assets, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, the way the market works. Then I think there's going to be a lot of changes in circumstances for people or groups of people. So I think about those who lose their job. They now will be looking for a way to make money, and you could help them make money. Again, I go back to my original point. Can you help a person make money? So I think just, physically or financially, there will be circumstances that change in your industry that are worth looking at and addressing. And you could fashion a solution that could be interesting. Then I think, thirdly, I think this landscape, and we talked about earlier how the travel content market has a really high overhead and lots of people, right? So, and are not doing things well in the first place. So that combination means that you might have an opportunity to modernize or address an industry that is legacy. So bring a legacy. So I think about law firms. Law firms are notoriously bad at technology and deserve to be, and I think some people are trying to, but those and banks, and they deserve some modernization, right? And I think there's solutions that, I think the same thing about the travel content market. It is really born out of physical books and printed in words and blocks that we are trying to do. So I think about like Square. So you go to the store and you swipe your little card in that little square. That was born out of the 2008 crisis. So that was and the same thing for Stripe. Stripe is a credit card processing.
Yeah.
So those two industries were really bad at technology and was hard. So if you threw up a website and you wanted to take payments, it took a developer weeks or maybe months to install that payment processor. Stripe just put a little snippet of code. You put that on your site, bam, all of a sudden you're accepting payments. So that, I just think, like, the ability to modernize and address a legacy industry like that is just slow and painful with technology. I don't know, that's just super interesting to me. Shopify did the same thing. So I think about, it's like new energy, right? So if you can bring this new energy and it makes it so much easier to do XYZ with that solution, then I think that's a really interesting way to think about, is it worth starting a business? Yes. So that's just the opportunity that kind of, was thinking through for myself in this climate.
Are there industries out there that you're seeing, that you see opportunity in, that are not very advanced, or the big players aren't doing it very well, where it's time for some innovation? I mean, you mentioned law firms, you mentioned banks. Any others out there, or even smaller industries that you see?
Yeah, there's bound to be. This is I think the industry that you're in, you can kind of look at it. Like, I think about, so I work for Ingram Content Group, which is their brunt of their business is content distribution, and that means physical books. So when you place an order on Amazon, half the time that book is being put on a truck and delivered to whatever distribution point by Ingram. That is a really legacy business, right? There's bound to be lots of components in that legacy old school business that could be modernized and made more efficient through technology.
Yes.
Or at least, it could be brought into the 21st century in some way.
Yep.
There's millions of these examples of businesses.
And don't you think that's where, if someone is looking for opportunities, because there's so many opportunities out there, because that's what technology does, it allows opportunities to be democratized, really. Start with what you know. Like, start in your industry, or start with what you know. Start with areas that you're interested in, know a lot about. Like, that's probably better than looking for opportunities out there and then going into something you have no clue about, no experience in. Yep. Because there's so many opportunities, you may as well, because if someone's going to go into business, you need all the advantages on your side that you can possibly get. Yeah. An important advantage is a strong knowledge on that subject matter, industry, experience, that type of thing. So
firsthand experience, firsthand experiences. And I think about, you could take your skill set to another category, another industry. So I think about, for Bright Trip, like, I was not a travel content expert, but I was good at, delivering online video-based content, right? Or in an education format, right?
And you knew a lot about international travel.
Right. So I think applying my EdTech experience to the travel category made sense for me, especially with partners.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if you can kind of think in that lens, I think there's lots of interesting opportunities.
Now, you mentioned maybe this is less relevant for, say, a lifestyle business like a dentist or something. This idea of if you're going to start a business, have it make someone money, save someone money, or just have a much better experience. But part of that's still true for any business, right? I mean, even if you are thinking about opening up a family practice or an attorney or law firm or whatever, I mean, it still sort of rings true.
Yeah, I think its principles could be applied. I haven't applied them myself, I guess, and I'm sure there's a scenario where they don't work. So
Right.
I think they work almost 90% of the time, 95% of the time in technology. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the advisability of people going into business for themselves? Like, this is probably one of the more common questions that I get from folks that are thinking about going into business themselves and are not sure, like, should they, shouldn't they? Are they built for this? Are they not? Like, a lot of them have a desire, but they might have had an uncle or their dad try to do something and it didn't go very well, and it basically, it just left a bad taste in their mouth. And so that's like the big negative where they wouldn't want to go into it because of how they had seen it, consume someone else's life and it didn't go very well. So whatever. What are your thoughts on, the advisability of someone to go into business for themselves at all or not in the first place?
I would say, that bad taste in your mouth you have, get used to it. I think you have to be an extreme optimist to start a business in the first place. Yeah. And what I think Elon Musk said one time, you have to enjoy like chewing glass and staring into the abyss a lot of times,
Yeah.
So I think, there's this element of reality that you need to have, that this is not going to be easy and the risk of failure is super high and you need to have high tolerance for pain.
Yes.
And it may not work.
Yes.
It's a real look. Entrepreneurship is hard.
Yes.
And the deck is extremely stacked against you. So I think going through that risk process is really important.
Yeah.
Like de-risking a venture, I think, I wouldn't have done Bright Trip had we not had important elements like a large industry partner, a platform that was already built, and a group of co-founders that were extremely good for doing for large companies, creating videos, and had this huge reputation, this huge following that we have benefited from.
Yes.
So there's just so we had customers out of the gate, right? We've already sold because of their network. We have a partner ready to send us more customers. Software was built. It was easy to raise money because I was a second-time founder. So things like that.
Yes.
That, because I would not have done it, frankly, had I not had those 5, tailwinds going with me. So I think the solution, like I mentioned, needs to be magnitudes better, drastically better. If it's not, use somebody else's money to do it.
Yeah.
So I think, I think there's just as much as you can de-risk it. I think then, and if you have high tolerance for pain, I think it's
yes, I totally agree. Yeah, and you gotta have some grit too, because
grit and smarts. Just be smart about the venture. Don't go off and create something just because you think it might be fun or enjoyable or could change something. I mean, it's ventures are hard and ought to be don't leave your 6th salary job.
Sure. If you don't have a real good plan.
Yeah.
By the way, we didn't talk about, are you still working with Johnny and Izzy?
Yes.
Okay.
We they are all in, man.
Okay. Awesome.
They did a great job, and they're a real inspiration. So for those who are listening, Johnny and Iz are a married couple who are my co-founders in Bright Trip. And they run large travel content categories for Vox Media, vox.com, Vox Media. So Johnny runs a channel called Borders. So he goes around the world and talks about interesting borders, Venezuela, Colombia, for example, and India, Pakistan, and list goes on. So he's
still doing that?
His last episode is coming out, I think, in a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Vox Borders, really fascinating. And does a channel called Travel, Eat, Repeat, which is really about traveling with kids and eating, and it's kind of a family take on.
They're both so good. I mean, their videos are really, really good.
Yeah. So so I think about why Bright Trip and this team, why this team and why now? we like the product founder market fit is like really good. EdTech and travel and video expertise. And it just, making sure that your founding team makes sense for the market matters to venture capital and for funders.
Yeah, certainly. And it matters for success too.
Right.
I think you did a great job selecting your co-founders because you did not know them. These were not friends that you were like, hey, let's do this thing. You had the idea to do the thing first, then went after them as co-founders, correct?
Yeah, and think about what like a startup CEO ought to do. 3 things. They ought to share the vision, right? The ideation, and like actually be the vision holder, the banner. Recruit the team. Like that's the CEO's responsibility is to recruit the team, and then keep money in the bank. The third one. But so I went and pitched, just like I pitched investors. I went and pitched Johnny and Is. Like I couldn't imagine a better couple of co-founders than them.
You flew to DC for that, right?
I had another meeting there, but
okay. Do they live in DC?
They do live in DC.
Okay, and are they both just traveling all the time?
They travel an enormous amount.
Yeah.
Without even telling me. I'm like, guys,
really?
I didn't know you're in there. I know they're in Canada or they're in.
Is Iz still doing her show too?
She sure is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. They just enrolled her for another season for to do another travel eat repeat and so
wonderful.
Yeah. So they're great. They're super talented and super smart, and I'm thrilled to have them as
it seems that way.
Yeah.
You all are.
Well,
Bright Trip's going to do great, man.
Maybe the weakest link, but but we're bullish on Bright Trip, I think.
Oh, I think you have good reason to be.
Yeah, we've had a lot of fun doing it. I mean, that matters too. Like, it's hard to do these things, but if you're passionate and you're enjoying it, it just makes a difference.
Yeah. So. Brighttrip.com?
Brighttrip.com. Yeah. BRIGHT trip.com. Yeah.
Nice. Anything you'd want to say kind of in closing here to wrap things up?
No, I just appreciate you having me.
Yeah.
And it's fun to be a second-time podcaster with you.
Well, it's probably not going to be the last. Next time, bring another book by the Puritans.
Your ratings might dive after that.
No, seriously. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.